Welcome to an hour of HealthMade Radio. HealthMade is a community for natural health seekers where we educate people about common health conditions and share extensive research on the most effective natural health treatments and promote legislation that protects our health freedoms. A core concept belief is in the innate intelligence and healing power of the body, and if properly supported spiritually, emotionally, and nutritionally, it can find its way back to health. HealthMade Radio will bring information from integrative health experts throughout the world. Check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt, and I will be your host. Today's guest is Jensen, author of Forgiven Sinner. Author, radio host, speaker, energy master, and visionary, Les was born into a Mormon household in Brigham City, Utah, the last of 7 children. This laissez-faire situation allowed him significant freedom to explore his strong sense of independence and to indulge his curiosity about the world around him, how it worked, and the people within it. His technical skills eventually led to a very successful career in engineering in the broadcast industry, and it was here that he experienced a spiritual awakening. He hadn't had a spiritual notion of himself before that, but decades of studying the nature of frequency, energy, and very high levels of power in television had prepared him for working with the energy of human consciousness. His language became that of karma, emotions, mental stigmas, energy bodies, and levels of consciousness, and the power behind them. Meanwhile, years before becoming an author, Les experiences this energy in the form of a life-changing moment when he broke himself wide open. He felt so much energy pouring out of his personal persona that he went inside his inner self and started cleaning up whatever he found that didn't serve his well-being. More or less naturally, such life-altering changes led to the creation of New Human Living in 2009, a global platform to assist humanity in discovering its own truth without any bias towards a religious group or existing establishment. Les, it's such an honor to have you on your show, and I'm really excited to hear what you have to say in regards to the forgiven sinner.
Well, thanks for having me on your show. It's such a pleasure to be here.
I am curious. You created New Human Living, this global platform, and it's about discovering truth, and it's not tilted towards any kind of religious group. So, in your eyes, what is truth? Well,
there's a singular truth, I would say, in that the universe was created from a single source. I mean, I'd have to be really careful about describing it. I like the burning bush, I am that I am, or the Bhagavad Gita, as it is. In other words, a source consciousness, if you will, prime creator, God, whatever you want to call it. And then there's subjective truth. We kill human beings on this planet at our own hands. That's the truth. It's an ugly truth. But it's a truth that was created by the intention of consciousness itself. The idea that it's done unto you as you believe. So if that's true, then as diverse as 7 billion people on the planet's belief systems are, there would be 7 billion flavors of what is, quote, true, unquote.
But behind all that, you say you have that kind of clean truth, the one singular truth, I am that I am, that is kind of the source of existence.
Sure. Kind of the root consciousness or source consciousness. And I don't want to put it, I know I'm quoting scripture and things like that, but I'm not putting it in a religious context. I think the truth existed before language, religion, human construct. So truth with a big T is more of a description of the mechanics of the universe, if you will, kind of like this root source of creation. And then the subjective truth is what has that source creation created through the individualized manifestation of itself, like you, like me, like anyone listening to the show, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And with that, then you have then a certain level of consciousness that is kind of permeating all of this existence. And how would you describe this consciousness? What is consciousness?
Awareness. Again, I wouldn't want to get too talky or chatty with it because it's a very clean, unadulterated. I mean, it's not a polluted. It's source consciousness. So, what is consciousness? Awareness.
So because you worked a lot then with electricity. I mean, you were in engineering in the broadcast industry, and so in your book you kind of liken consciousness or this power, so to say, to electricity. I mean, how would you describe how they would relate?
Sure. Well, you see electricity in nature in the form of lightning bolts during a thunderstorm, or maybe you shuffle your feet across the carpet and then you touch the light switch and you see a very minute amount of electricity with a spark. But yet electricity was not discovered for centuries because it's so elusive, it's so intangible. So here we have this in consciousness. And in our example, human consciousness. Well, everything man has ever created has come from the inspiration of consciousness. So consciousness, just like electricity, can be refined and focused to create air conditioning for our buildings, heat, lights at night. And then the much more detailed aspect of electricity, computers, cell phones, the internet. Our consciousness is as pliable as our imagination will allow it to be.
So this and I mean that's a powerful tool, the imagination. I know you talked a lot about that. So imagination, how is that connected to reality?
How do you believe it's connected to reality? I'm not trying to skirt the question here.
No.
But I mean, just for example, on this planet right now at this time, there's a man with $10 trillion worth of ideas on the table, colonizing Mars, creating a rocket company, creating an electric car company, building the world's largest battery factory, creating a boring company, a tunneling company. And he wakes up every day with a simple sense of self, and he has a vision. So I think the real power of human consciousness is be able to hold a vision, regardless if you can see the possibility of it or not, to hold the vision of what you want to create and then show up every day and step it forward inch by inch, action by action.
So I'm a naturopathic doctor, so I see people dealing with health conditions all day long. So and that's what I really love to kind of get into, that in health and healing, in addition to creating these different companies or bringing forth knowledge and technology and so forth, but also in your own healing journey, be it emotional, physical, spiritually, to be able then to use your imagination as to what outcome it is that would be preferred, that you would like, and then to hold that and then you create the reality around that. I mean, by holding it, you then attract attract reality to make that come true. Am I correct with that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I would definitely agree with that, and I would perhaps embellish it a bit with the notion of subconscious energy, or another way to phrase it, the subconscious karmic imprinting. And to give you an example of that, before my awakening, and I mean right before my spiritual awakening, the cosmic 2x4 across my forehead, I could have described my health as digestive tract problems. I was experiencing the onset of ulcers. I was gnashing my teeth in my sleep. My health was going down. And then in this one episode, unexpectedly, I released the emotion of anger, and I released an awful lot of energy in a very short period of time. And the abruptness of that and the profound intensity of that caught my attention, and I've never let it go. And after I released that energy, all those symptoms started subsiding, and as I pursued releasing more energy out of my psyche, the symptoms disappeared. Well, my father had 5 heart attacks, and I'm not going to have any. But he held everything in. He wouldn't let anything out. And so he compounded the energy that he was pushing into his psyche. And that energy can create a dis-ease in our physical persona.
We're going to take a quick break. I'd like to chat a little bit more about that kind of compression of energy when we get back. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Les Jensen, author of Forgiven Sinner. Welcome to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. We're here with the author Les Jensen. So you were mentioning this event that you had where you had this subconscious awakening, or there was this awakening within you. You had all this anger that you didn't know that was there, but they were stored there. And you mentioned your father had like 5 heart attacks, and is more likely due to these emotions being kind of stored and impacting him physiologically. And then by releasing that, you also release its impact on your physical well-being. So with that, then this compressed, these compressed emotions, it's almost like you're compressing then space within your body, and that becomes a very kind of powerful quantum of energy within that space, and it can really impact you health-wise without you even knowing it.
Yes, certainly. So look at the public. I mean, I would suggest that there's a scale of human consciousness that's logarithmic, and how do we talk about electricity without talking about volts and amps? I mean, it took us a long time to get there. So if we're going to talk about human consciousness and having it either suppressed or awakened, we could use the scale of the wall of a room. At the bottom of the wall would be death or near death, and at the top of the wall would be Christ consciousness or enlightenment or the Buddha or the highest form of consciousness in physical form. So consciousness is so elusive, you can't put it in a container, you can't measure it yet. So at the bottom of the wall, we can imagine a Vietnam vet with PTSD. He's panhandling on the corner of a street. He has so little energy left in his psyche. It's all been compressed into his subconscious. He's running on fumes. If he gets a cold tonight, he'll die. And then logarithmically, we'll increment up through the wall, and at the top of the wall, the mythology of all the masters. Jesus walks in a room, and his persona, the purity of his consciousness, erases the subconscious imprinting of dis-ease in the people in his presence. So with this imaginary scale, we can look at society and see people are operating at a vast array of different capabilities. And if we put some arbitrary scale to it, we can start to kind of quantify the impact of karmic imprinting on our subconscious.
So when you say karmic imprinting, is that the different experiences that we've had that then create interferences on a subconscious level?
Experiences themselves do not create karma. You can traverse time and space and accumulate no karma whatsoever.
Kind of like what Jesus did, and through his life.
That's right.
Yes,
that's right. But to do that, you have to accept all that is happening without posture, judgment, or judgment. The moment you posture, the moment you quantify and polarize the experience. For example, in my dynamic, I learned at a very early age in my family of origin that anger was a decisive emotion. My dad was a World War II vet. He cut you in half with his eyes. When he got mad, the whole family tried to become invisible. And so at a very young age, I learned that when my family dynamic experienced anger, I saw fear on my mom's face. I saw fear on my siblings' face. So I decided, probably before I even learned to talk or walk, that I didn't want to bring that look on my mother's face. I didn't want to be the source of that kind of pain in the household. So I created a mechanism to not give myself permission to ever get angry. And so there I am posturing with the emotion of anger. So when my brother would destroy my favorite poster on my wall, I would get sad, and the anger would get immediately pushed into my subconscious. And so I'd create a subconscious karmic propensity to avoid the feeling of anger for 35 years until it cracked me open in my spiritual awakening.
So the key is then to, like you're saying, is not to judge the emotion, but to allow it to unfold as it is, without holding it in, judging it, creating values on it.
Sure. Well, our emotions are a gift. Our emotions are wonderful. And the key here, and this will help in relationships and everything, you're not responsible for how anybody else feels. And nobody is responsible for how you feel. Now, that doesn't mean I can't trigger an emotional reaction in somebody else with my behavior. But their reaction is they don't have to, but they should really own that, because what is an emotion? An emotion is an energetic wave of energy that comes out of my psyche that shows me how I perceive myself in relationship to my environment. So it's a message from me to me. So where we get in trouble is, especially in our personal relationships, we'll say, well, he makes me so happy, or he makes me so mad. So we're totally disowning how we feel there, and we're projecting the ownership of how we feel on somebody else, and that's just insanity.
Yeah, so with that, it is then to be okay. I mean, owning your own existence, and then at the same time, like you're saying, not hold on to the emotions or suppress emotions, but allowing them, like electricity, you want it to just flow. You don't want to have all this resistance, that creates friction. So you want to open up the pathways and allow it then to flow. So if you have all these, like you were talking about the Vietnam vet, dealing with all these traumatic events and all these emotions and all these things that is just kind of stored within, and that creating that kind of friction within, which doesn't allow the electricity to move through, or that divine light, so to say, which kind of behind all the energy, that we have, not allowing that to move through that individual, to kind of allow all the functions within the body to function the way that it should.
Oh yeah, certainly. Well, whatever you resist feeling gets pushed into your subconscious. Your karma is like this huge energetic recorder of everything you've disowned or refused to digest, if you will. What does an emotion want except to be felt? Period. End of story. When we feel our emotions, we release it in the moment, and there's no residue. There's none of it stored. But in our society, there's so much judgment, and there's so much right and wrong kind of thinking. The universe as a whole doesn't have a notion of right or wrong. The burning bush, I am that I am. Do whatever you want. But there'll be karma with your bad choices, but please do whatever you want. I mean, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, the key is then to be able to connect with that pure energy, but in order for that pure energy to flow through you have to work on yourself, to remove the karmic posturing that you're saying that creates, and that resistance of that divine light to flow through you.
Right. If you want to embody the higher consciousness, purify your personal energy persona. Because gravity didn't change when you learned how to walk. Gravity didn't change. You came into alignment with the natural order of gravity. Well, pure consciousness is love. You can't hold hate and embody love. You can't do it. So if for so many of us on this planet at this time, we have an awful lot of karmic imprinting. We're experiencing life below our knees. If we look at the wall as the scale of human consciousness, the vast majority of human consciousness is about knee level or below, and it's a logarithmic scale. And so over 20 years ago, I had that episode, and I've been scrubbing my persona every single day that I'm alive, and I still do it. And my gosh, did I find all kinds of crap in my subconscious. And now I rarely get colds. I don't take any medicine of any kind or shots whatsoever. And my body tells me what it wants. And I have an awful lot of vitality and energy in my day-to-day life from cleaning out the karmic imprinting in my personal energy persona.
That's amazing. Well, we're going to take a quick break. I'm here with Les Jensen. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I am here with Les Jensen, author of Forgiven Sinner. So how you're talking about your scrubbing your persona, again and again and again, and obviously we all need to do it. What does that process look like? I mean, how would an individual go through practically what you do in order to be more, or raise your consciousness?
Well, I wrote a book about that, Personal Power Fundamentals, to give you an idea of what you would do to purify your persona. What are we talking about when we talk about the energy of our personal energy persona? Well, we're talking about consciousness. What's my karma? If I have a karmic propensity, what's the energy behind that karma? Well, it's my own consciousness. The energy of karma is the energy of consciousness. So when I started to posture with my own consciousness and I started polarizing and posturing with it, I created a polarity, a karmic disposition. And so you use example, and I did a soldier with PTSD. If you go into shock, you're taking all your experience and doing a huge dump into your subconscious. When you're in shock, you don't feel anything. And so the entire experience gets pushed into your subconscious. So when we talk about cleaning that out, you have to start to get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. When I first released the anger in that moment of my awakening, my ego was scared to death of anger, and it didn't know it. And that's very, very, very important. My ego was scared to death of anger, and yet it didn't know that it had anger. It didn't know about anger. Anger was not in my day-to-day behavior because my behavior was to suppress it. So, these are just simple tips, but we could talk an hour and a half about how to release karma. When you go into an environment and you feel your energy shift, in order to do that, you would need to be mindful. When you feel your energy shift, stay in the energy. So you come home from work and your spouse is there and you've been arguing about money, and here's a new bill, and now there's an extra layer of stress, and you feel like crap, and you don't want to engage the process, and you want to go pour yourself a drink because you don't like the feeling. Whenever you have a feeling that comes up, you might have a habit of pushing it back down. When you push that back down, you're ensuring that more energy will be in your psyche by the end of the day, and that karmically you're accumulating more energy into your persona. But if you feel uncomfortable and you allow yourself to stay in that feeling of discomfort, the energy can flow through you as the feeling pronounced in the moment. And if you get good at it, you can lean into the feeling and let go of a lot of that energy. And that is literally releasing karma out of your subconscious.
And what I thought was interesting in your book, you were talking about, you didn't know about the energy, because your ego was suppressing it because it was afraid of it. But still, you're attracting people around you that had anger issues. And so it's like, even though you don't know about it, you're then creating, it's like your subconscious is creating an environment around you that allows you to heal, that allows you to see what you can't see.
Yep. The law of attraction brought me an angry boss, and he was three things. He was malicious, he was petty, and he was my angel. He was a gift to me to come and push my anger button for a decade. I go into work and he'd do the most petty crap with me, and he would stir up my energy. That's very, very, very important. He got me upset. Let me say that a little differently. He got the energy within me to go from subconscious to conscious by making me upset. And that's why I was gnashing my teeth. That's why my digestive tract was squirming around in the caustic energy of intense emotional anger. And when I released it, my body went back to eat.
So your subconscious is trying to make you aware of what's stored in there, but then at the same time, you're because you're not not leaning into what you're seeing, what you're feeling. You're not looking at your environment as something that's reflecting yourself in it.
Right.
Because of that, then I mean, so your subconscious try to bring that information out while your conscious or your ego was then continually having suppress it on a day-to-day basis. And because of that, you're exerting a huge amount of energy to keep it suppressed, which obviously drives you more towards disease rather than recognizing, this anger, is around me. I'm not comfortable with it. What does it mean? And then really kind of leaning into it and dancing with it and experiencing it.
Yes. So I could have blamed him. I could have blamed, he's such a terrible boss, and moved to another state or another country. I could move to anywhere on the planet, and I'd attract me a new improved teacher because I'd have more karma.
Yeah, exactly. And this was your best lesson. I mean, this was you. These individuals, yes, they were having all these issues, karmic imprinting and posturing themselves, but it was that dance between them and you. So they were blessing you with, the energy to so that you could see who you are and what you're dealing with within.
Sure. And I mean, we could even take it one click farther. Your soul has a vision, a dream for what your life can be. And for the vast majority of humanity, that goes ignored in their day-to-day life because they're doing all this emotional aerobics with their karma. When you go to do something that you've never done before, you bump up against the subconscious imprinting, the thoughts, the beliefs, the feelings, the attitudes that are imprinted in your subconscious. When you go to up your game and perform at a higher level, you literally are bumping up against your karma. And a lot of people have resigned kind of a flatline attitude that, well, this is how life is. I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to get on the bus, just like the rest of us. And life becomes very mundane, and there's no passion, and there's no vision, and there's no not only hope, but let's go beyond hope and excitement and enthusiasm for the understanding that we're human consciousness personified. We're the elixir of all creation right now. Our consciousness right now is what makes creation happen.
Yeah. We're gonna take a quick break. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. I'm here with Les Jensen, author of Forgiven Sinner. Welcome back to HealthMade Radio. I'm Dr. Michael Karlfeldt. I'm here with Les Jensen. So it's like you're saying. I mean, the goal is not to be comfortable. The goal is to evolve and to almost get uncomfortable, because when you're uncomfortable, you're then in a space where you're then bumping against your so-called karmic posturing or the karma that you have that's impeding your ability to connect more with that divine purity.
Sure. And that could be taken that you're going to spend the rest of your life feeling uncomfortable, and that's not per se what I would suggest. But what if you want to heal your persona, don't avoid your feelings, any of them. If you're in a difficult relationship, bravo, you're in the perfect classroom to root the stuff up out of your subconscious. Don't walk away from a pissy, ornery, stubborn, bullheaded teacher, because if you have an easy teacher and your ego's afraid of your subconscious, nothing will happen.
Yeah.
I mean, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I mean, first grade math is easy, and if you want it easy, you can stay there. But if you want to evolve, obviously you need to kind of push a little bit harder, and you have to get into places that, may be confusing. And that's just part of evolving.
Sure.
Yeah, and I love the phrase that you're saying. we said show up, master love, play big. It's important for us to show up, and that's the first step is just to show up.
Oh yeah. Now, see, love is you mentioned love. Love is the most beautiful thing ever. Love expands forever. Love doesn't know any boundaries. You can't exhaust it. It's kind of weird. If you get up and spend every ounce of it you have today, you'll have more tomorrow. But to be a vessel of love, love is a very powerful form of consciousness, and love will bump you up against your karma. Love will certainly be a challenging thing to master if you haven't mastered yourself. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, and I know you mentioned that the universe, it actually changes its behavior in response to what the individual is expecting. So if the individual is holding love, the universe will then change its behavior to express love.
Right. Well, yes, correct. The level of consciousness that you're operating at determines your experience of the life that you're living. Now, karma in and of itself is impersonal. Karma is impersonal. So, for example, in that moment when my whole life changed, there's an immense amount of anger flowing through my persona, just like turning on a 1,000,000-watt television transmitter. The glycol pumps come on, the blower comes on, immense amount of electricity starts flowing. This anger is flowing out of my psyche, and in the moment I was startled. I'm like, who the hell are you? And the anger is like, I don't care. Think of me what you will. And what my point is here, you can be in a difficult situation in your life right now because of the way you feel. In the most fundamental sense, the energy that's making your feelings is not deciding how you feel it. It's a habit of how you feel it that makes it feel the way it does. So in other words, anger can scare me to death, or anger can be an elixir of fuel and energy that's extremely powerful. But the anger didn't change, I changed. So you can change overnight in a heartbeat your experience with any emotion that you have. So you can come out of suffering in the moment you decide to. The feeling will still be there, but your reaction to it will change, and so your results will change.
So with this then, I mean, the title of your book, for forgiven sinners, and so tell me with what we've been talking about then, obviously forgiving yourself, forgiving others, that is a crucial aspect of healing, and sinners, we're all obviously, none of us are perfect other than Christ being that walked on earth. So how do we forgive ourselves then? Well,
remember, Christ said that you'll do everything that I have done. So we should see ourselves. The tagline to the book, Forgiven Sinner, God's last Savior. When you recognize that when Jesus said, you'll do everything I will do, you have Christ consciousness within yourself. That's that pure source consciousness at your root. So to answer your question, how do we forgive ourselves? Well, you can recognize that we're put on this planet with fierce freedom. And over time, we've chosen as a collective of souls to go into the darkness. I don't have to tell anybody on this planet how dark the human persona has been with war and deceit and pain and suffering. I mean, but nobody died in any of that experience. Now, what I'm talking about is our soul. You had a soul before you were born. You were born into a human persona. You didn't have an ego the day you were born. Your family of origin grew an ego on top of your persona and instilled beliefs and values as different as any other family on the planet. And then you went in to experience life, and with that predisposition of posturing, you can't help. I would say sin is the ingestion of karma. Sin is posturing with what is, and forgiveness is the releasing of that karma and forgiving yourself as a sense of judgment that your soul chose to go into such difficult situations to master the art of being a human being in the vast realms of emotional experiences that are happening on this planet at this time.
So, I mean, when we hear karma, you always think of Indian religion and more kind of Eastern religion, but it really is not anything that is connected to a specific religion. It's more just like you're saying, gravity. It's just a principle that is impersonal. It just exists, and it's just based upon what you're saying, our judgment of things, and that creates that separation and builds up then karma. Our different actions can then create karma based upon good, evil, etc.
Sure.
So with that, then is in order forgiveness is then to when we're like you're saying, we were born into this existence. We're pure souls to start with, and then you have all this ego, you have family posturing, you have all these layers that you are born into that then allow us then to experience life and also to grow, and that process of forgiveness is how how does that play out? Because you have God as being, or the pure consciousness. It is pure, and then how is this process of bringing in all this karmic experiences and then clearing them out? How does that benefit the whole?
Well, it's a way for consciousness to experience itself. In the simplest sense, but look at the ego can be for the most part on this planet. The ego is completely separated from the source consciousness that it's riding on. The ego has no consciousness of its own. It operates through the flow of source consciousness through your persona. So the ego can develop a sense of separation. So the young soldier that we've sent off to war, he's on the battlefield, and he's getting emotionally torn apart by the atrocities that he's seen. And at some point, the anger of the pain of his persona overwhelms him, and he turns into rage, and his sergeant pins a badge of honor on his uniform because his rage did the most horrendous, atrocious act against the, quote, enemy. Now, all of that could be described as sin or karma. And then he comes home and he starts to remember that he went into the village and did such atrocities, and he's having flash frames of women and children or whatever. I don't want to, we can all imagine. And so he's got to forgive himself. Well, you can't operate at the bottom of human consciousness and walk in love. The human ego can fear shadows. The human ego can fear the unreal. And once we're in fear, we'll do atrocious things. So to hold your ego in contempt because it operated out of fear is just going to cast some more karmic crap in your subconscious. We have to. The burning bush said, "I am that I am." You're gonna go to every nook and cranny of consciousness in your free agency, and I'm okay with that.
Great. Well, I truly appreciate you coming on the show, Les. It was really been fascinating to hear your, all the experiences and all the knowledge that you have acquired from your awakening and how that has driven you further, and I truly appreciate it, and thank you so much.
I thank you for having me on your show. It's my pleasure to be here anytime.
Well, thank you so much. That is all for today. You're listening to HealthMade Radio. Be sure to check us out at healthmade.co. Health is what you make it.